Now, it may not seem like it based on the weather in the last few episodes, but it's actually spring. Sure, when I'm filming this, it's about 30 degrees outside, but hey, that's beside the point. First comes spring, then comes warm weather. And for the TT, that specifically means we're getting pretty close to starting the vinyl wrap. That doesn't mean we're home free though. There's a couple things I want to do to the car beforehand so that we set ourselves up for the best possible results. Most of these are cosmetic, like replacing the trim and deciding on what we want to do with headlights and taillights. But there's also one more upgrade that is, well, legally required. Here in about a week is the legal limit for when I can keep my studs on. So we're switching back to the summer setup. Snow tires I have are fantastic on the ice. Because they're studded, that means that they are kind of a nuisance in about every other situation. The road noise is absolutely crazy. They've also got hardly any grip in the dry. So in other words, I'm really looking forward for my car to be able to handle well again. And our summer setup is really good at that. If you don't remember, or you're new to the build, this car runs TSW C-Brings with Continental DWS 06 Pluses for the summer. Sure, it's an all-season tire, but the grip is phenomenal. I genuinely like these enough to keep running them on all of my cars, and I think I'll keep doing that in the future. I'm also a huge fan of these wheels. My favorite thing about them is the amount of three-dimensional depth they have for remaining mostly flat. Since the overall design language of the car is pretty understated, something like this works pretty well on it. Plus, it's gonna match all of our custom aero and other goodies that I have on the way for the wrap. The color I have picked and the black accents are really gonna look good together. We'll talk about that more in just a second. And swapping back to these is going to be rather simple. But there's a few things we got to address beforehand. The TT got two recent upgrades, both of which happened before we even took these wheels out. And if you're a keen observer, you might have even noticed them. So before we throw these wheels on, let's go back in time a bit and talk about what changed. Where did we leave off in the last TT episode? Oh yeah, the catch can. If you missed it, in the last episode we took an existing catch can kit for a GTI and modified it such that it worked with the TT225. I am pleased to report that it is still working just as we intended. That wasn't all we did that day though. In the episode that came out before the catch can episode, we got rained out before we got the chance to address our headlights. Let's talk my plans for the TT headlights in general. When we wrapped the S4, we swapped over to aftermarket headlights and taillights, and I've been looking for some similar options for the TT, but I genuinely think the OEM units suit this car the best, and from a headlight engineering history standpoint, they're rather important too. So in the spirit of preparing this car to look as good as possible after we wrap it, I want to make these headlights look better than they currently do. While they're not the cloudiest they've ever been, they're definitely not the cleanest. I've used a lot of headlight polishing kits on this car in the past, but I've not used one like this. I'm trying one that's a little bit different today. It's not sponsored or anything like that. This is just something that I've seen around and genuinely been curious if it actually does anything different than the normal kits. Unlike all the kits I've used before, this one uses chemicals to remove the initial oxidation, which is why you see me wearing gloves. They give you about 4 wipes per headlight, which literally just seem to melt and pull off the oxidation. After using all the wipes they gave me, I moved on to everybody's favorite step, the wet sanding with 2000 and 3000 grit. You do this until the headlight is perfectly smooth. Once it's dry, it's going to fog over universally. The third step in this process is also a little bit different. The kits I've used in the past come with a polishing compound and an attachment for your drill. This basically makes it all shiny. The third step is a ceramic coating wipe. Once it's all fogged over, you simply make a couple passes over the headlight, overlapping by about 50%, and you're done. You've got to let it dry for an hour, but honestly, I don't know if it should be allowed for something to look this satisfying. And I'm honestly happy to say that I am stoked with the results too. If the headlights stay looking this good long enough, I think they're seriously going to do the wrap justice. These headlights weren't really that terrible to begin with, but you can, however, notice a serious difference when you compare the reflector of the headlight we didn't touch with the one that we did. I don't know if I've ever been able to see this clearly into the headlight, so I'm stoked and ready to replicate it on the other side. They're looking good. We gotta wait about an hour for them to dry. As far as restoring these headlights goes, that's kind of all she wrote. Simple and an improvement. That wasn't the big change though. In my effort to make this car as good looking as possible before the wrap, there's one big thing we need to replace, and you've probably noticed it getting worse in the past few episodes. This car's windshield has been cracked a little bit for about as long as I've owned it. We're finally getting the entire windshield replaced because as of a couple weeks ago, we got a rock chip which has spread into pretty much the entire windshield being cracked. Thankfully, we got insurance, so we're gonna get that fixed today. While it would be nice to have OEM glass on the car, I'm definitely not going to say no when my insurance offers to replace it for free. Plus, having it done remotely like this gave me a chance to actually see how it was done. I couldn't really film the process, but I will definitely say that if you get the chance to watch this done on a car, I highly recommend it. I wish I could have helped, but it looked to have been a pretty fun install. Especially if you're anything like me and think tools that are designed for one specific job are super satisfying. All in all though, it's pretty cool to finally have a windshield without cracks in this car. This car has been a project as long as I've owned it, but I think this is one more step in the right direction. With those two changes, you are officially caught up with where this car is currently. Now we're ready to jump back in and swap into the summer setup. Well, swapping wheels is a pretty simple setup. We never actually ran spacers with these aftermarket wheels. Let's see if they're gonna work. Let's take a second to talk about spacer fitment. These are 10mm spacers, and they're specifically designed to mount to OEM wheels, so there is no side-to-side play on the center bore. Aftermarket wheels are designed to fit multiple cars though, so the center bore is larger. And to properly run these, we're gonna need to use something called a hub ring. All this is a little metal ring that sits on the end of the spacer, making it so there's no play between it and the wheel. They're as simple as they sound. There is, however, one more thing we're going to need in order to run these spacers with these aftermarket wheels, and great timing. That piece of the puzzle just showed up. It did, however, come with a surprise package, something I didn't order, but it made me happy enough that I'm going to feature it in the video.
Oh, shit. Hey, that's rad. Oh, no way. What?
If you don't remember Motoza Performance, they're the guys that tuned both the TT and the S4, and it looks like they found out about my videos. I really wasn't expecting them to send me stuff, but they did, and I mean it when I say that it actually means something to me. So thank you, Motoza.
You might think it's a little weird for me to feature something like this in a video, but I'm really grateful actually. I know this is kind of a common thing on YouTube, but for me, this is new and it's a first time, so I'm actually really grateful and appreciative of this.
The final piece of the summer setup puzzle also came. Aftermarket wheels use a different type of lug bolt than OEM. These are the lug bolts that came with the aftermarket wheels when we bought them, and they have a conical seat. That's the angled part right there. If we're even gonna try these spacers out, we need to make sure that we increase the length of the bolt, which is why the new ones are long enough to accommodate the spacer. So now we are finally ready to install all the wheels. will say, after lowering the S4, I think my TT has a bit of wheel gap envy. I've been driving the S4 around for a while now, and honestly, I kinda like the low ride height and the wheel gap that it has. The fitment just looks a lot better. So I think before we get the TT suspension tuned, what we should do is drop the ride height a little bit. Nothing crazy, just enough that it's not ridiculously higher than the S4. To be honest, this weekend went completely different than how I planned. I had a much more involved job planned for the following day, but something came up that was a surprise. Definitely a good surprise, but it was one that had a much shorter window of opportunity, if you catch my drift. I'm saving this for later, but there might be some hints in the description. But for now, let's take a look at what we did. Well, I definitely still love how these wheels look on this car, and with the spacers they look even better. I haven't had the chance to push the car too much, but from what little I've driven it with the spacers and the summer setup, it handles great. I don't think these 10mm spacers are enough to completely throw off the handling characteristics of the car, but they are definitely enough to make it look better. So in other words, we're making more and more progress with each episode, and I'm stoked for where we're headed. We're getting seriously close to it being warm enough for us to wrap the car, and I cannot wait. Plus, I've got quite a few fun surprises on the way. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, learned something, or just want to see more, consider dropping a like and subscribing. Right now, that's the best way you can help support me and my content. I've got a lot planned for the channel here in the near future, so hopefully you're excited. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.